안녕하세요, 안타키입니다. Welcome to Let's Speak Korean. We're joined as usual by 지승현 선생님. Let's say hello. 안녕하세요, 선생님.
안녕하세요. 안녕하세요, 지승현입니다. 만나서 반갑습니다. Thank you for joining us in this lesson.
In our last lesson, we learned how to come up with expressions to indicate that we're trying out something. Let's go for a quick review now. 선생님, 이 책을 읽어보았어요?
네, 읽어보았어요. 아주 재미있었어요.
Do you know who the author of the book is?
글쎄요, 그건 잘 모르겠는데요.
I see. 선생님 says that she doesn't know who the author of the book is. I'm sure you could gather from her expression that she wasn't sure about the fact. Now, there is a certain expression that we can use when we're not sure about certain things, and that is what we're going to be learning in this lesson. Now, to do that, let's go to the clip now.
민욱 씨, 어디 가요?
극장에 가는데요. 같이 갈래요?
뭐 보러 가요?
만화 영화 보러 가요.
만화 영화요? 몇 시에 시작해요?
3시에 시작하는데요.
그럼 괜찮아요. 같이 가요.
Minuk and Michael run into each other on the street. Minuk says that he's going to go and watch an animation film, and he asks Michael to come along. It seems that Michael also likes animation film, and he asks Minuk what time he's going to the movie theater, and the two make an appointment to meet later on. Let's get a check of the key expressions in this lesson then. We'll learn how to come up with various expressions by attaching 는데요 to verb stems and 은데요 or 니은데요 to adjective stems. Let's go over some words that we will need to learn those expressions, so please listen carefully to 선생님.
찾다, 찾다, 자다, 자다. 위험하다, 위험하다. 짧다, 짧다.
We'll find out how 는데 and 은데 are used in the conversation now.
극장에 가는데요. 3시에 시작하는데요. 극장에 가는데요. 3시에 시작하는데요.
When Michael asks him where he is going, Minuk answers that he is going to the theater. What was his answer in Korean?
극장에 가는데요.
When Michael asks him when the movie starts, Minuk says that it begins at 3. How did he say this?
3시에 시작하는데요.
You may have noticed the common factor in all of these sentences. Now, all of them contain the phrases 는데요 or 니은데요. Now, 선생님, when do we use these expressions?
Okay, 는데요 and 니은데요 are also used to end sentences, but in fact, sentences that end this way are not a complete sentence. But by adding the word 요 in the sentence, it sounds like a complete sentence.
So with these expressions, there's always a likelihood of another clause coming after that. Isn't that right?
That's right. And the expression 극장에 가는데요, for instance, it could mean that the speaker wants the listener come along or is looking for something better to do. It can contain many other meanings.
In that case, how are we supposed to understand the exact meaning of what is being said?
Well, it depends on the situation. We have to either rely on the tone of what is said or on what the speaker and the listener are familiar with. Therefore, these expressions are used mostly in the informal or personal situations.
All right, then, could you tell us about the difference between when we use 는데 and when we use 니은데?
Okay, for verbs, we attached 는데, and for adjectives, we add 니은데.
Thank you for that explanation. Now then, let's practice forming some of these phrases. Now, please listen carefully to 선생님.
책을 찾다. 책을 찾는데요. 책을 찾는데요. 자다. 자는데요. 자는데요. 위험하다. 위험한데요. 위험한데요. 짧다. 짧은데요. 짧은데요.
Good. We'll try our hand at some complete sentences this time.
책을 찾는데요. 민욱 씨는 지금 자는데요. 산은 위험한데요. 이 바지는 너무 짧은데요.
So we attach 는데 for verb stems and we use 니은데 for adjective stems. Please don't forget that. Well then, let's practice some more questions and answers. Join us for this drill exercise. 뭘 하세요?
책을 찾는데요.
지금 뭐 해요?
지금 자는데요.
산에 같이 가요.
산은 위험한데요.
이 바지가 어때요?
그 바지는 짧은데요.
Time for some extra expressions. In the conversation clip that we saw, Minuk says that he is going to go watch an animation films. The word in Korean for animation film is manhwa 영화, and it is a combination of the word manhwa and the word 영화. Now, 선생님, what is the Korean word for cartoon books then?
Well, it's quite simple. Do you remember the word for book in Korean? Right. The book is 책 in Korean, right? So 만화책 is a cartoon or comic book.
And then we have cartoons and newspapers and so on. What do we call those?
Well, we call them 신문 만화 in Korean. We have different words to refer to them in English, right? But in Korean, we just add other words to refer to animations or cartoons.
All right, then let's practice saying some of those words. Please repeat them after 선생님.
만화 영화. 만화 영화. 만화책. 만화책. 신문 만화. 신문 만화.
It's time to wrap up what we have learned up to this point. Let's go over the expressions one by one along with the clip.
민욱 씨, 어디 가요?
민욱 씨, 어디 가요?
극장에 가는데요. 같이 갈래요?
극장에 가는데요. 같이 갈래요?
뭐 보러 가요?
뭐 보러 가요?
만화 영화 보러 가요.
만화 영화 보러 가요.
만화 영화요? 몇 시에 시작해요?
만화 영화요? 몇 시에 시작해요?
3시에 시작하는데요.
시작하는데요.
그럼 괜찮아요. 같이 가요.
그럼 괜찮아요. 같이 가요.
Here now is the entire clip once again, so this time try to memorize them.
민욱 씨, 어디 가요?
극장에 가는데요. 같이 갈래요?
뭐 보러 가요?
만화 영화 보러 가요.
만화 영화요? 몇 시에 시작해요?
3시에 시작하는데요.
그럼 괜찮아요. 같이 가요.
This is the part of our lesson where we learn some accurate Korean pronunciations. Now, in a continuation from our last lesson, we are going to take a closer look at sounds that come at the beginning of words. In our last lesson, we learned that we try to avoid using the real sound at the beginning of words. Now, this does not just apply to the real sound, but it also applies to the niun sound. Let's take a listen to 선생님's explanation.
Well, it's basically the same rule. The only difference from the case of real is that for niun, this only applies when it is followed by the vowel sound e. Okay, let's take a closer look now. In the case of the word for woman, 여자, its original form is 여자. But you will notice that it is difficult to pronounce when the character niun comes at the beginning of the word, so it's turned into an iung, to be read as 여자 instead. So in the case of the shortened form for the word 남자 and 여자, it is 남녀. So when the word 여 comes after a letter, it retains its original sound of 녀.
Isn't this a bit confusing? I mean, do we pronounce it as 여 or 녀?
Well, don't worry, just read it as it is written.
All right then, let's listen to 선생님's accurate pronunciation.
여자, 여자, 여자. 남녀, 남녀, 남녀.
We've run out of time on this edition of Let's Speak Korean. In this lesson, we learned how to use 는데 or 니은데 to express sentences where the ending or the meaning is open to the situation or the conversation that the two people are having. Let's get a quick review before we go. 선생님, 오늘 기분이 아주 좋은 것 같은데요.
그래요? 퇴근할 때 맥주 마시고 갈까요?
Well, that sounds like a good idea. A light drink before we go off. All right then. That is all the time we have on this edition. So until next time, 안녕히 계세요.